Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Hostile Array frontman Brendan Frey to the podcast. Hostile Array released their latest EP, Underneath, back on September 20th. Brandon talks about the impact of his small-town music scene, how changing beliefs led to Hostile Array's formation, working with Andy from Monuments, and more. I love getting to chat with new up-and-coming bands and share their music with you, the podcast audience. Thanks so much for checking out this episode. It's always a risk when you share a new band or an unsigned band and you want people to listen. So thanks for checking out this episode and Hostile Array. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks for listening. You can find links in our show notes or over at asthestorygrows.com to our Discord server, our mailing list, or you can support the show financially via Patreon. Enjoy getting to know Brendan from Hostile Array.
Part of my process is I try not to read like press releases, like maybe I'll skim them, but I usually just like, I want to hear a band before I make a decision whether to chat with them, just like let the music speak to me or whatever bullshit. Sure. Like, but I was like, okay, I'll go to talk to them. So then I do my research and I'm like, all right, press release. I'm like, oh, from Maryland. That's cool. I also have Old Bay in my blood. That's great. I'm like, where in Maryland? Frederick. That's cool. My brother lives in Frederick.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. I was like, that's great. Wonderful. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I assume you grew up that way.
Yeah. Probably about 30 minutes or so from here in Carroll County area. So okay. Yeah. So I'm not sure how you said you're you I guess also from Maryland or lived in Maryland at some point or
Yeah. No, I am. Yeah. I grew up Gaithersburg area. Currently. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in Mount Airy then. So then you know the area then.
Oh yeah. My mom currently lives in Mount Airy.
Oh, no kidding. That's so wild.
Yeah. It's a small world sometimes. It's great. So
shoot, man, I don't know how old you are, but you probably remember all the Mount Airy Fire Hall shows and stuff back in the day. And
I'm probably older than that, so I do not. I was probably too old for that, or I didn't live here for a while, so
gotcha.
That's true. When I lived in Northern Virginia, and then I moved to Philadelphia, and when I moved to Philadelphia, I was like, that's it. We'll never move back to the DMV. I'll never live in Maryland again.
Sure.
And here I am, 3 years later. Yeah. So what was growing up like?
I mean, where I was at, Mount Airy was nothing. There was nothing there, right? So like literally the only outlets kids had, I feel, was like going to like the local fire halls and Grange halls to like play shows and see random bands tour through bands that like should have never been played in small venues like that. It's like, no, this doesn't make sense. Like, 300 kids packed into a hall or whatever. But no, it was, quiet, rural area. Fairly conservative area, so definitely a lot to unpack there. But
oh yeah. Did you frequent the skate park?
Yeah, I actually lived right down the street from the skate park growing up.
Nice.
So yeah, because I lived right off of Main in Mount Airy.
Nice. So, I remember when it first opened up, and it was like, oh, we have a skate park now, like within driving distance. It was delightful.
Shoot, yeah.
What got you into music?
What got me into music? Oh man, really, my older brother who actually plays guitar in the band I'm in now, and we've always kind of played music together pretty consistently since I was a kid. Him and his friends really started to get into stuff, and I was probably 9 or 10 when I really started actually taking notice of music and stuff, and they kind of shifted me in more like the hard rock kind of direction, and then just kind of progressively got into heavier stuff and everything. And branched out into all the, random things you could find on Pure Volume or MySpace back in the day.
Yeah.
So it just became an obsession really at that point, because I grew up pretty sheltered off a little bit, but not a little bit, very much in the religious communities locally. And it was like a whole different world, just fascinating to me. So really just kind of dove head first, and it clearly wasn't a phase because I'm 31 now and still very much into the same kind of different styles and different things, and matured some in it, but definitely never lost interest.
Nice. Was it your brother who got you introduced to like the local scene?
Actually, he was probably not really the one that got me into that. It was actually some other friends we kind of met over time. My brother's much more introverted than I am. I'm definitely more of the extrovert out of the two. So if anything, he probably ended up actually meeting more people in the music scene through me, but he definitely started the initial interest in the music stuff. So
Nice. What got you connected to the local scene then?
Really, it was a friend of mine that I had met that was only for a short period of time at a church that I was going to at the time growing up. He was telling me about like how there was like a local show going on and everything, and he just brought me out. I think that was the first time I got hit by someone at a show too. I was like probably like 12 or something like that. And I had no idea what was happening, but the energy was just like awesome. It was just probably like 50 kids packed in a room, and I had never seen something like that before. And I was like, yeah, I like this. I want to be a part of this, and just kind of got plugged in with random people. And that kind of just started it. It didn't hurt that the local venue for everyone was literally within, a couple miles of my house. So it was very accessible, right? It's not like I had to drive an hour or 45 minutes to get to the nearest show. It was always something going on. So
Right. And the price for entrance is probably like, $5-10 and like bring a case and get in. Like
Exactly. It was never too extreme to like pay that, definitely, could get by with just hourly wage trying to get in there.
Yeah. There definitely feels like there's an element like similar to roller coasters or horror films. There's like, when you get into hardcore, there's like this element of danger, but like ultimately you're safe, but like you feel that like anything could happen, a fight could break out.
Sure. Yeah, definitely like an adrenaline aspect to it.
Yeah. At what point then were you just like, okay, I need to start a band or learn an instrument?
It was actually probably before I even really got plugged in with like a local music scene or anything, because my brother had already been very interested in starting bands and stuff. And I didn't know what that entailed, but I knew I wanted to kind of be a part of it. So I just ended up picking up bass guitar and started playing around with that. And because he didn't really know anyone either, he couldn't really find anyone to recruit to play in a band with him. And he's like, all right, cool. Like, I guess we'll get you to play. And then we got one of our longtime friends that we grew up with to play drums with us in one of our first bands, and just kind of never stopped doing that.
Yeah.
It was definitely, cycling through a bunch of close friends we grew up with, and then kind of networking with people. And then eventually, you end up, I don't know, 15, 20 years later, still networking and meeting new people and kind of finding your people to play with long term. So the guys I'm playing music with now, we've been friends for a while and all met through the local music scene outside of my brother, obviously. But just kind of the evolution of networking and getting to know people in your local area. So.
Talk to me about Hostile Array, how this project gets started.
Yeah, so for years, my brother and I kind of played in a Christian metalcore band back in the day, because obviously, like I mentioned, we were raised pretty religious. Neither of us are very religious anymore. Definitely can probably hear a lot of that in some of the the lyrics, some of the critiques and everything I have of my background and upbringing, but that I write now. But yeah, it was kind of like a shift out of realizing we weren't quite interested in doing that style, doing that kind of message or anything anymore. And we still had a bunch of friends that we really liked playing with that were playing in the same band, and we all kind of had similar feelings about it was time to kind of put the existing project to rest and reset. So around 2017, we took a lot of material that we had kind of on the back burner that we never really did anything with, and said, okay, here's some stuff that we've always kind of wanted to play with. Let's expand on this and kind of redefine the sound and the direction we wanted to go. And that ended up being the first album we put together as a band. Looking back on it, I probably would have cut the fat a little bit from that album and maybe just kind of gone in with an EP at first, because there's some stuff I'm still really proud of on that first release, and there's some others that I'm like, this could have been put on the back burner for sure. But yeah, that was basically it. We ended up going in with a friend of ours who had been producing some of our previous band's music, and he came down from the Chicago area, more like Rockford, Illinois, to be more exact, but came down and worked with us locally and put that together, and we've just been kind of picking away at it ever since.
Nice. What was the name of the metalcore band?
It was a band called My Ransom Soul.
Okay.
So I was still the vocalist back then, started off as the bassist originally, but that was definitely a lot more, I don't know, just straightforward metalcore. I think the last thing we put out, some people were kind of saying it sounded like a mix between Misery Signals and Wage War, which is very different than what we currently do. But yeah, it was a lot of learning and changing styles over time with that, because literally starting a band when you're like 14 and then progressing onwards is there's a lot of development that happens there, right? I kind of compare it to an artist. If you're an artist that was painting, or doing some kind of painting or something like that, right? And someone really showed off like your first work, you'd probably be like, that's something I don't really want out there, right? But then it kind of adds to your discography as a music artist, right? It's like, oh yeah, that just like you can literally see the linear progression. Like, okay, it's time to reset.
Yeah, it's one of the most interesting critiques that still happen. Maybe not interesting, but it's like all these bands that came up in that metalcore scene when they were, 16, 17, 18, and then, they're like 26, 30 now, and they leave Christianity behind, and people are like, how could they do that? And like get all frustrated. I'm like,
right.
They were children with not fully developed brains, and now they are adults with lived experiences. Like, people evolve and change. This is the nature of things. Like,
right, exactly. Well, you don't really get to choose where you get placed,
Right.
Background wise, right? You never know what you're necessarily going to be brought up. And so like a lot of the boom of the Christian metalcore phase was youth group kids bored out of their mind playing whatever instruments they can. They find
Right.
this somewhat taboo music in the Christian circles, right? Because it did definitely take some time for people in religious circles to even accept that as being a thing, right? But they have all this energy and nothing better to do, and then as they get older, and especially the ones that start touring and start seeing the rest of the world and realize there's perspectives outside of their own, that's going to change you some, right? Especially when you've been sheltered off from a lot of society.
Yeah. What was the inspiration for the name of Hostile Array?
It kind of just came up as we were recording the first album we had for this project. We didn't have a name when we were recording it, and we were trying to find something that just would catch someone's attention. Our guitarist Garrison just proposed the idea. He's said basically this could mean in the opposition of something, and at the time we were kind of taking a little bit of a political slant lyrically, and we thought, hey, that kind of sounds cool. It doesn't necessarily have like a heavy meaning to it, but basically to be in opposition to something. I was like, yeah, that fits the vibe of this first release we're doing. So yeah, wish it was deeper than that, but it sounded cool. We wanted to go with it.
Yeah. What were political or anti-religious things that were like focusing your writing?
So for that, it was interesting because I was kind of really going through a transitional period politically and just the view of the world in general. I grew up like super conservative. And at that time, I would say I was probably much closer to like the anti-authority, like libertarian style of political leaning. Wouldn't necessarily identify with that anymore. I would say I'm pretty fairly left-leaning right now, very, very much on the liberal side of things. But I was very conscious to kind of know my place at that time and know that like there were definitely some things I was still kind of working out at my own perspective. So really leaned into a lot of the more social issues that I knew that I was very strong, felt very strongly about, right? Like things like immigration issues, because like our drummer is actually a immigrant from El Salvador and everything, and how that directly related to us. Very, very divisive political time around that time. It was, 2018. We were writing this in 2017. So you just had the whole 2016 election cycle and seen some of the rhetoric there. Things like, nationalism, the rise of nationalism at that time definitely sparked some irritation with us, right? Especially Christian nationalism. So a lot of themes like that ran throughout the first release we wrote, and things like prison system reform, etc. Right? So the things that I'm still very proud of that we addressed in those early recordings, because I think it still holds up for the most part.
Yeah. It's a big day for you because your new EP is out today. It's called Underneath. That's the opening track on the EP. What led to calling the EP Underneath?
So obviously the if you look for the lyrics, the main line is "Pull me out from underneath," and the whole idea of that song is really pulled from my own struggle with mental health issues, and the idea of kind of getting pulled out from the weight of your own mental health problems, right? And also how that relates to pushing those closest to you away. The whole song is basically just about struggling with that dynamic of, hey, you want someone to reach out and help you to get through those things, but you also feel like you're pushing them away. So you can't really fully be open. And it's kind of like a crazy feeling, you start really getting inside your own head. And so it's just a reflection of that. And I think all three songs to an extent is kind of just a reflection of where I'm at right now and dealing with some of the things I've struggled with, that and detoxing from some of the toxic religious culture I grew up in. The song like Slow Decay on the EP definitely digs into that pretty heavily. So Underneath just felt like the right vibe and the right word to describe it, because it all kind of relates back to some kind of mental health aspect.
You mentioned Slow Decay. You have Andy from Monuments on that track. How'd you get connected with him for the feature?
So Andy and I actually grew up in the same music scene. So he's also from around this area. He might actually live in the same city now. I know he's moved around Maryland a few times, but we both grew up going to shows at the local fire hall, and we met, when we were just teenagers. Kind of lost connection over the years, but got reacquainted over the past several years. And I know that he also had a little bit of a religious upbringing as well, and kind of detoxed from that. I know he had been pretty vocal about it online. So both sound wise and message wise, I felt it was like the right fit. So I hit him up and said, hey, I got this song. I'd really like you to hop on it if you're interested. and he was totally down. He was so cool about it. And really, I think he helped bring that track to life in a way that I couldn't have imagined. So really grateful to have Andy around and on that track for sure.
Nice. It seems like this EP is a little bit heavier than the one you guys released last year. Was that an intentional direction to try to add a little bit more oomph?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the last EP before that, I think, was kind of us trying to prove to ourselves that we could do something different, because we had for years played much heavier metalcore style music. And I'd probably say the previous EP, Trauma, was, much more synth heavy, much more, I don't want to say active rock, but that's kind of more what it was. It was heavier, modern rock, I guess. Right. And I really kind of wanted to marry those two styles together, where we had kind of gone on that EP and some of the stuff we started this project out with. I think this is more where I'm comfortable being in that like happy medium of marrying those two worlds. But yeah, it was definitely intentional, because I think this is where I want to be, at least right now. Right.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want any limits though on where we go creatively.
Yeah. What was the inspiration for the album and single artwork?
So the actual concept of that was brought to us by our bassist Brody. He is definitely a phenomenal creative mind. He's got some graphic design background and actually designs a lot of our merch and album covers. But for this, he took basically the concepts I conveyed lyrically to him, and basically pitched the idea of someone being portrayed as struggling with some kind of mental health aspect, right? And how to like visualize that. So really he pitched the idea of, kind of like the outstretched blackened hands, kind of representing that ominous aspect of mental health, and kind of reaching out to our friend Betty, who modeled for it. We had another friend, Fat Lopez, who's a local musician and photographer, that came out and did the photo shoot with us, and then Brody did the actual design work for it. So really, that's all Brody's brainchild there for sure.
Nice. You guys put this EP out today. I mean, you're a small band in a large pond. Like, when you're thinking about releasing this EP and putting out, a small chunk of music, what's your strategy or hope? Just like, I mean, you're doing this as a passion project, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think the I don't want to say delusions, but the hope of doing this for any kind of serious monetary value has definitely diminished over time. I don't necessarily expect that, right? I mean, all of us in the band have our own careers and families that we're, taking care of. So this is 100% a passion project. Really, I actually enjoy that to an extent now that I've kind of refixed in my mind to realize that this is just about, really getting that artistic expression out there. It's, I want to be able to share this with people and get the, I don't want to say status, but the recognition for the art that I'm putting out there. But that's really it. It's sharing something that I've been able to create and that I'm passionate about and getting it out there. Would love to, get access to playing larger shows and things like that, and maybe touring a little bit here and there. But end of the day, it's really just to get the art out there and share that with the world. So strategically, it's really just, pushing that as hard as I can, using whatever means that are accessible, maybe putting some money into some very targeted PR and advertising, right? I mean, the less fun part of being in a band is the money you dump in to get people to actually listen, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it, get it out there on the internet and try to promote it as hard as I can until, more opportunities open up.
Yeah. I've read an interview with Pat from Drug Church yesterday, and he said, I'm doing this thing exclusively because it expresses me. It's fundamentally no different than your grandmother sitting in the garden and painting on her easel, and you're just like, damn, But you're right.
Exactly. It's just much more expensive of a hobby.
Right.
It's funny because I have friends that are really into, various projects, like, for example, like project cars and stuff like that, and the amount of money they spend on that. And, people will give them a hard time for spending that much money. I start thinking about how much money I've put into just music gear and promotion and all the other things that go along with being in a band. I'm like, I have no room to talk.
Yeah. There's like a bunch of pedal boards behind me, and I'm like, it's a lot of money just sitting on the floor.
Exactly. But hey, I mean, it makes life more interesting, right?
Yeah. New EP's out. What's the future of the band looking like? I mean, do you have shows coming up? You guys, already looking ahead to the next EP or?
Yeah, so I think we're still working on newer music already. Not anything for necessarily an EP or anything like that. Really, just kind of focusing on individual songs right now to keep new music coming. Because we really have a hard time stopping in that sense. Shows wise, we do have a handful of shows regionally that we're playing. Really not going out on the road or anything like that, because I feel like now it's not as advantageous for an artist to go out on the road and do stuff. So we play when we can, and things that make sense financially, right? So yeah, definitely trying to stay fairly active and play out when we can, but definitely looking for new opportunities to maybe get out a little bit further as well if it makes sense.
Yeah.